everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Criterion Watch. This is our first, just like we did for Film Freaks, this is our first one through Zoom. And you know what, Paul? Because Paul is my guest, obviously. So say hello, Paul.
Hello, Paul.
Okay. All right. Well, no, the reason we decided to do this, Zoom show basically now through, I guess, a few of our
Zoom
things.
style.
Yeah, we just did one for Indie Film Cafe, but that was like a podcast. And then we're going to do, I think we've got a couple other things that we're going to plan to do through Zoom. This is actually just the easiest way for Paul and I to actually do videos together and stuff. Because I think, honestly, I feel like we've been missing that. Haven't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We definitely have a good, back and forth regards to films.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm really excited to be able to do this. What are you laughing about?
I was just going to say, plus we can both yap.
Oh, whoa, yeah. I remember that's why I got into the podcast business is, my parents are like, why haven't you been doing this for years?
Right. We're yappers.
Yep. But it is what it is. We enjoy yapping about film.
Absolutely.
Either bad films, IFC style, or really, really good films like Film Freaks or Criterion Watch. I think, and I like to talk about the films I love that Paul doesn't love, which I do not Hollywood knockbusters. But we'll talk about that another time. But for now, let's concentrate on The Player, which is our movie. I've got this Criterion, which has some awesome special features there too.
Robert Altman, baby.
It's got let me read this because I think that we should do that from now on. Is like read the special features that are on the Criterions.
Sure.
If we can. So it's got audio commentary. Well, it's a new 4K digital restoration with 2.0 surround sound. Audio commentary from 1992 featuring Robert Altman, writer Michael Tolkien, and cinematographer Jean Lapine. Interview with Altman from 1992. New interviews with Tolkien, actor Tim Robbins, associate producer David Levi and Levy, and production designer Stephen Altman. Cannes Film Festival press conference from 1992 with casting crew. Robert Altman's Players, a short documentary about the shooting of the film's fundraiser scene. Map to the Stars, which that sounds interesting. I did not get a chance to check that out. I do want to see that at some point. A gallery dedicated to the cameo appearances in the film, deleted scenes and outtakes, the film's opening shot with alternate commentaries by Altman, Lapine, and Tolkien, and trailers and TV spots, plus an essay by author Sam Wasson.
And I'm glad that you pointed all that out, too, because while I've had a copy of The Player, because I remember when it came out in the theaters and I loved it, I had just a regular copy of it. I don't have the Criterion version, so I don't have all those really cool extras and all that good stuff that the Criterion version has, which is really fabulous. So at some point, I wouldn't mind picking up the Criterion version of this film, too, because, this is a film that I've always really enjoyed. So
I think you would, okay, so do you remember what yours has on it, like any bonus features or anything?
I don't remember that there's very much. I think there may have been a couple of interviews, and that's really about it.
I think the commentary was there because it says commentary from 1992.
Okay, so maybe that was there.
My guess would be the commentary would be there, but that's the only thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be news since Robert Altman passed away, unfortunately. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'd be very curious just to see the transfer and the the new digital look of the film. So yeah, that'd be great.
Oh man, it's got a lot of. I mean, like I said, it's got a lot of stuff, and definitely worth. If you're a Criterion collector, The Player is definitely one of the films that is perfect for you and your collection, especially since you are yourself a Robert Altman fan, I believe.
Oh yeah. Plus, I mean, this is one of those movies that it's a Robert Altman mashup. On the one hand, it's a movie about making movies, which a lot of that's kind of like a tradition in Hollywood, is to make movies about making movies. But it's also a sort of, I don't want to say traditional, but a normal kind of Hollywood crime whodunit sort of thing, sort of all mixed up together in a Robert Altman style, which is really, really cool. And he manages to, do both parts of that really, really well, in my opinion.
All right, so let me read the synopsis.
Okay.
That's on the back of the Criterion. A Hollywood studio executive with a shaky moral compass, played by Tim Robbins, finds himself caught up in a criminal situation that might be right at home in one of his movie projects. In this biting industry satire from Robert Altman, mixing elements of film noir with sly insider comedy, the player, based on a novel by Michael Tolkien, functions as both a nifty, stylish murder story and a commentary on its own making, and is stocked with a heroic supporting cast: Peter Gallagher, Whoopi Goldberg, Greta Scacchi,
Yeah.
Dean Stockwell, Fred Ward, and a lineup of star cameos that make an astonishing Hollywood who's who. This comedy woven grand entertainment, which kicks off with one of America's cinema's most audacious and acclaimed opening shots, was the film that marked Altman's triumphant commercial comeback to the early 90s.
Right. And it's funny because the two things you mentioned there, I love Fred Ward. Fred Ward is one of my absolute favorite actors. He has just been sorely underused, in my opinion. This is a guy who should have been a star for a long time. He's just a wonderful actor, and he's part of that beginning where he's talking to I forget, was it Billy, the male boy, who's talking about the opening shot of Touch of Evil, the tracking shot that doesn't cut away, and how he hates cuts. And of course, the whole opening part of the player is the tracking shot. That's all in one long take.
Didn't they also mention another movie that was also tried to do that too? And
right, he was talking about Absolute Beginners.
Yeah,
the Julian Temple movie.
Yeah, exactly. And they apparently he had never heard of it or something.
Right, and that's funny. It's a great part of his character. People bring up other films, and he's like, "Well, I never saw that.
Right. Fred Ward was wonderful, and
Yes.
everybody in the cast
Walter.
was yeah. I mean, well, we'll get into the cast. We'll get into that. Before we start going into more stuff and more background and other things, I just wanted to make mention that this was originally going to be season 2's opener, but alas, I could not find it. It was in my van. I forgot even where it was, but it was in my van. I think it was underneath one of the seats or something. I got lodged down under there. And so when I was cleaning it out, when I moved, I was cleaning it out and I found it and I said, this has got to be the next one, because we did In a Lonely Place, which was the first opening one for me. And then I think we've done a couple of, maybe another one for me. But this one I knew I wanted to eventually come back and do. And I think this one is perfect especially for now, because this feels like a movie that could really be used now. It's about Hollywood. It's about how Hollywood, especially in the 90s, was very much a boys' game. All the guys. I mean, you look at the main his girlfriend originally, Bonnie, is that her character's name? She was trying her hardest to be one of the boys, and she thought every single second that Tim Robbins was kind of giving her a chance, that maybe he was actually giving her a chance, and he wasn't. He screws her completely throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, well, she's one of the few characters in the group there that shows integrity. Right. And, it shows what happens. And you see, for me, this is a real biting satire and indictment of Hollywood in the 80s and 90s, and certainly as today. I mean, it really kind of shows the Hollywood system for what it is and for the snakes who are running it. Because, you know, back in the 80s, early 80s, when they had the big, it was really, that was when they had the big takeover, and all the corporations started to come in and started to remove artists out of the important parts of the studio process and replace them with corporation people who are more interested in making money and are more interested in the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no accident that, you know, film qualities have really gone down since then. I mean, you've heard me talk about this over and over and over and over. And that one part where Peter Gallagher's character is coming in talking about how, why are we bothering to pay writers to write these things when we can just come up with crap ourselves pulled from newspapers. That really sort of stuff happens where they are removing artists out of the creative process in order to save money and just make up whatever kind of crap they want because people are going to just go out and spend money anyway. It's a very, very cynical indictment of that system. And the other thing is, of course, the way these people look at things through the bottom line only. They're looking at who is going to possibly be the most popular person at the time that they can shove in there. It doesn't matter if they're good for the part or not, just to bring the name with them. So everything is like, Bruce Willis, Julia Roberts, put them in everything because, you know, they're the flavor of the month. It doesn't matter if they're good for it or not. It's a very cynical way of being creative and making movies and stuff. It's really, really well done.
Well, I absolutely loved the fact that guy, that Tom Oakley or whatever, the character who comes up there is like, you know, it's got to be this way. It's got to be this way, right? And then at the end, you know, they're like, wow, you totally sold out. And he goes, look, you know, if you saw the way that it tested the last time, no, I'm doing it the right way now, you know, right? Like, because really, and in retrospect, doing it your way and doing it the way that's going to make money is completely different, you know, sometimes. You know?
Well, and that's part of the cynicism in this film, in my opinion, because they all sell out. The only one who doesn't is Bonnie, and she gets fired. Ultimately, all of them do, and even Tim Robbins' character. I mean, he might be on shaky moral ground in the beginning, but he's definitely pushed over into the bad guy lane by the end of the film. You know what I mean? He's made his jump, and it's to save his own ass and to you know, become the next guy, the next Brian James. And he's got to do that. You know,
which we haven't mentioned him, and like I love Brian James.
Oh yeah, he's
so
great
in this movie. Wonderful character actor, and but in this he's just like, I mean, he's just kind of like, you look at him in like Blade Runner, but then you look at him in something like this, it's completely different, you know. He's like, he's more normal, I guess, you know, like you know what I mean, like kind of but he does kind of remind me of like what a studio executive would be like. I know you're not a huge fan of like Entourage, but this was sort of like, I mean, in a way I saw a lot of Entourage in, you know, or I guess a lot of the player in Entourage, you know, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They use a lot of things that kind of remind me of, you know, so obviously they were probably fans. They had to be fans of this movie because this is, I feel like this is, if you're in the film industry or you're just a fan of the film industry, this is definitely the movie for you because it's just historical in a way, you know, like, and it's beautiful, beautifully shot. We talked about the crane shot in the beginning, the one track, you know, take or whatever, which, I mean, was that longer than A Touch of Evil, I wonder? I think
I didn't time it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was very, very close to being the same length. But like you're saying, there's a number of things. The other shot or scene that I really, really like is the scene where Tim Robbins' character goes to visit David Kahane because he thinks that David Kahane, and that's the other guy who was brilliant in this movie, by the way. I'm just not getting ahead of myself there, but he goes to meet him. He's not there, and he sees his wife or his girlfriend, Greta Scacchi, on the outside, and they have this scene where he's talking to her over the phone, but he's actually standing right outside the window looking at her, and talking to her and interacting with her, and at the same time he's actually spying on her. But it was really, really, really well done. That was one of my favorite scenes in the whole film.
All right, well, okay, we've been talking about cast pretty much. Let's kind of dive into the cast, because there's a good amount of people in this movie, and all of them are exceptional. So Tim Robbins plays Griffin Mill, and he was exceptional. He was
really good.
Pretty much just the idea of a man who's kind of like pushed to the edge, because this guy is threatening him. He's trying to get to the bottom of it. That's where like the film noir stuff really comes in. He's trying to he does a little bit of detective work, and then he goes to David Cahane's
Vincent
house.
D'onofrio.
Vincent D'onofrio. Well, we'll get into him in a second.
Wonderful performance as usual.
And then he sees Greta Scacchi, who plays June. Oh God, I'm gonna fuck this name up.
Goodman's daughter.
Goodman's daughter. So that was daughter, or whatever, oh my goodness. Then there's Fred Ward, who we talked about earlier, and he was fucking exceptional. As he was security, pretty much, right? Like, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was head of studio security.
Yeah, head of studio security, and he was just phenomenal. Loved him in it.
And you get the impression he was probably like an ex-cop, and that he's one of those guys that you might think is kind of a dope, but really knows a whole lot more than he's letting on.
Exactly. Oh yeah. I was watching it with my roommate, and she laughed when we said, when he goes, "Think fast," throws the ball. Cause I was like, he was really keeping Tim Robbins on the edge of his toes, because he knew the whole time everything. He even knew he murdered.
He knew it from the beginning. Yeah. He really did.
And he was like saying, if you don't watch out, the cops are going to figure this out too. If I can figure this out, the cops are going to figure this out. I mean, it's not, you're pretty much just too, right now they're thinking it's a botched robbery, which he did. That was a smart move of breaking the window of the car. But yeah. So then to go to
yourself
to the cop. Oh yeah, that scene was so brutal. Oh my goodness. So then the cop, the first cop is Detective Avery, played by Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
What?
I was going to talk later about Whoopi Goldberg and Lyle Lovett, how they weren't necessarily the people that I would have chosen for that, but
I thought they did wonderful.
I thought they did okay. Whoopi Goldberg in particular, I think, did pretty well. I'm still not convinced Lyle Lovett was the best choice, or did
Lyle Lovett maybe good. Not. It was weird because he didn't really have a lot to do, like other than kind of creeped around. He was basically the person you were supposed to think for the long time that he was the murderer, because he was creeping around and you didn't know, what I mean? You didn't see him before.
He was the red herring.
Yeah, he's the red herring. So you think for a long time. So there'll be some zooms in where you'll see him like outside staring, or whatever. And, Tim Robbins doesn't even notice him until he's at the party and everything. And he, was like, how do you, do you enjoy the party? How did you enjoy the party? And, which is a great line he says, and he does it perfectly. Lyle Lovett does it perfectly, where he looks over and goes, "I never enjoy anything when I'm on duty."
Right. Well, the problem is that of course he doesn't really play the role of the red herring very well, because we already know what happened. We saw what happened, so we know he's not a murderer. So who else could he possibly be? He's got to be a cop. You know what I mean? So
wait a minute. No, we don't, because the whole idea was that Hugh, that we thought that we didn't think that David Cahane was the murderer. From the very beginning, there's no. No.
Tim Robbins is the murderer. There's only one murderer.
I'm just saying.
We saw it. What we were trying to figure out is who was sending the faxes.
Right.
And the threat.
And you never figure that out.
Right. Right. He's the red herring for that.
That's what I'm saying. So he's the red herring for that, which is perfect, because he does it in a way where, they film it in a way where you're not at all not like, if you're watching this for the first time, this is my like third time or fourth time watching it, and so rewatching it over and over, I I know what happens, you know, and I know the ending and I know everything. So I know, I know, and spoilers, if you haven't seen this movie, I mean, I don't know why you're listening to this video, watching this video, because, you know, maybe you should go see it, go watch it, go rent it on Amazon, or especially buy the
It's on
Criterion.
Amazon Prime.
Um,
That's for sure.
but yeah, so go watch that. But like the whole thing is, for the whole time you think Lyle Lovett, because he looks creepy and he's standing outside and he's like waiting, that he's the guy that's sending them the pictures, you know, or whatever,
Right.
sending him the stuff, following him around and everything. Then you find out who he is. So he's definitely a good red herring for that. You know, I
For
thought he
that
did it.
part, right.
I thought he
And
did a wonderful job. I mean,
no, I didn't particularly. I just didn't buy him. He just didn't really strike me as much. And initially, I didn't really care for Whoopi Goldberg the first time I saw the film. But upon repeated viewings, I think she actually did a pretty good job. And as it turned out, um, from what I understand, she actually went to Robert Altman and said, "Hey, I hear you're making a film. I'd love to be in it." And he cast her in that role. So that's kind of an interesting story right there. I mean, if he didn't think she could do it, she wouldn't have done it. But you know,
exactly. And I think she also kind of brings in a little bit of comedic relief that we need at that, you know, because even though the movie has some satire and some funny bits to it, it's more along the lines of a drama, you know. It's more along the lines of a thriller, you know, or whatever. It's not a you know, so when she brings the kind of the comedy with her character, like that, the greatest scene in that movie is her saying, "Did you fuck her?" And that scene, and everybody, you know, and him getting all upset, like, "How dare you ask me these questions?" And I'm like, you know, she's just like, you know, why are you getting defensive over this if you don't have anything to hide, you know, right? Like,
right.
he's obviously acting very guilty from the very beginning, because he is guilty and he
Right.
doesn't know
At
how
least
to.
to a point.
Right. So I mean, he didn't fuck her. All he had to say was, "No, I didn't fuck her," because he didn't actually end up fucking her till, you know, days afterwards, you know, or whatever, when he
Right.
ended up hooking up. So I mean, I don't know, but anyway, that scene was just one of the funniest scenes in the whole
And
movie, and because of Whoopi Goldberg, I think she does a
and
really
then
great face.
getting to some of the other performances. Yeah, Vincent D'onofrio, who's always been one of my favorite actors of all time, he was amazing. If you were to compare his acting or his role in Full Metal Jacket and then looked at him now, I mean, man must have lost 85 pounds. He grew long hair. You know, he had the glasses on. He looked like an artsy writer kind of type person, but very, very, very bitter and cynical and sort of drunk and you know, obviously very frustrated with his position, and also very much on the outside of the Hollywood system. And he's kind of there to sort of vent his frustrations and anger at the whole system for ignoring him and not treating him like a regular person. He did a really, really good job. And Greta Scacchi did a very
Well,
good job
real
too, because
quick
she's
before you
also
go,
an
I
outsider.
want to mention, I want to talk real quick about Vincent before you go on to the next, you know, cast member or whatever that you want to talk about. But Vincent was so fucking great, like,
Oh
because
yeah.
you were right, because the thing about him is that you look at Full Metal Jacket, he's big as, you know, heck, and he, you know, whatever. Then you look at you know, then you look at this, and then you look 2 years after this was 94, was Ed Wood, where he was back to being a bigger, heavier guy. So
Right.
he'll do a you know, a movie and gain weight for it. There's a lot of actors who get asked that question: are you willing to get you know, to gain weight, or are you willing to also lose it, you know, like right after each other? If you're not willing to do that as an actor, I don't think you should be you know, be willing to do that if you're, you know, but he did a wonderful job in both things. And or all of them, everything he's ever been in.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, I can't think of a single performance from Vincent D'Onofrio that I did not think was excellent.
Yep.
Not a single one.
So you want to go to Greta now?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say I thought she did a really, really good job too. And this was kind of an odd role for her. You know, she was usually, you know, does a lot of romantic leads and stuff. this character is a lot more of an outsider, kind of similar to David Kahane, but from a different point of view. She doesn't even watch movies. She has no interest in movies. She's completely outside of the whole movie and studio situation. So she's not really impressed by any of the people who are there. She doesn't really care about any of that stuff. She kind of just does her own thing. And, she even says it herself. She says, first David was here and then he's gone and now you've come. And, she just kind of goes through life like that, just kind of going from one experience to the next and just kind of processing them as she goes.
Yeah. Life just comes to her, She doesn't really do anything like for herself, But yeah, no, she was wonderful. I loved her in it. I have never seen, I don't know if I've ever seen her in anything else. Or if I have, I didn't recognize her, So
yeah, she's been in some stuff.
Okay, and then there's Peter Gallagher, who plays Larry Levy, who was just wonderful also. He's like the scumbag that's going to take over and going to basically steal Tim Robbins' job, and and Tim is like threatened by this guy. And there's a great scene where with Tim Robbins and Brian James, where he's just like, if this guy comes in, I'm quitting. And he looks at him and is like, you can't quit. I've got a year and a half on your contract. If you leave now, I'm going to sue your ass, or whatever. He was like, well, why? Why do I have to put up with this guy? And he was like, because he came easy. Like it was,
right.
that was like the only reason is like they got him cheap or something, like that was it. This guy was nothing that they cared about other than like he knew enough to what he was doing. And then he does the greatest thing. Tim Robbins does the greatest thing that I've ever seen anybody do, which is try to give him a bad script and say, "Oh, you run with it," and then I'm gonna sit here and not have to do anything. So I absolutely love that that aspect of it.
And it's interesting because that scene and that whole relationship undermines or underlines the backstory that's going on, which is this is a studio that's losing money. They are not profitable. Brian James's character is on the hot seat. We go into the movie seeing that Tim Robbins' character is on the hot seat. They're all looking around wondering if they should start looking for other jobs. And then here comes Larry Levy, who they, like you said, they got on the cheap to bring in there to try and help stabilize the system. And they are looking for something that's going to make money. That's what they're doing. They're not looking for something that's going to necessarily bring them an Oscar or that's necessarily artistic. They're looking to put butts in the seat and make some money because, they have these financiers out of Boston coming in who are backing them with some money. Who the heck knows what that's coming from? But they send one of their kids there, and the kid's in there like, he's pulling out all these pictures of women trying to get dates from the studio head saying, hey, what about her? What about her? And in a situation that normally they would just toss this idiot out on his ass because he's a moron. But the fact is they need the money. So they got to play up to this guy. So there's all this tension and stuff going on underneath that's, leading to some of the scenes that not normally would have happened, which I thought was really, really cool. And again, that's one of the things that happened in the 80s. A lot of the studios went through this.
Well, and especially like this is a movie about the studio world, and there's been a few movies. I know it was Hail Caesar was a little bit about the studio system. I don't really know that many that's about it. It's like Entourage has a little bit of it, but a little bit of that, but like not many people do that, right? Speaking of which, Ari Gold and Entourage is in this movie, which I know you're not a huge fan of Jeremy Piven.
He's all right.
He's fantastic in this movie too, because he's just like he's just another executive there that's kind of a part of it or whatever. But though again, I thought he was like, at first I thought he was like a tour guide, like he was going around telling everybody this is where this goes, kind of let him in on the business stuff, and I was like, wait a minute, I was a little confused because I was like, is he what is his job?
He seemed like an associate producer, sort of a lower rung guy.
Okay.
But getting back to the whole studio situation, the other interesting thing about it is, of course, the fact that Robert Altman was one of that group in the late 60s, early 70s who kind of came back to help resurrect the Hollywood system. The George Lucases and the Francis Ford Coppolas and that generation of directors who came in. He was part of that group.
Oh, yes, he was.
In 1970 was MASH, and then McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and just a bunch of films that he made. He made some good stuff. But the thing is, too, he always kind of sort of made his own films in his own kind of way. He was a bit of an outsider, and then he left for a while. So, Jonathan, you mentioned the fact that this was considered something of a comeback film for him. He went off and did other things. I think he did television, and I think he did some other stuff. But he was kind of out of the Hollywood game for quite a bit. And then this was his return. And it's kind of a shame because, he ends up, dying earlier than we would would have preferred. So I would have liked to have seen 3 or 4 movies from Robert Altman. Unfortunately, it just didn't happen.
We still did get. Didn't we get like Shortcuts after this, or was
I thought Shortcuts was before that.
No, but Shortcuts was after, because that was 93, and then we also got Kansas City, which was I've heard good things about that.
That's a good
movie. I've not
movie.
seen it. I haven't even seen Shortcuts yet. I am not. I mean, this is probably. And I haven't even seen. Okay, you're gonna kill me on this one, but I have not seen MASH yet because
wow.
I don't know. I just haven't. It's just like there's a million movies, out there. I did see Dr. T and the Women years ago, which was not that great of a movie, but it was him. And I do remember Gosford Park. I don't remember if I watched it or not.
I like that one.
And that was like one of the last ones he did before he passed away. He did the last one he did was Prairie Home Companion, which was nice. That. It was nice that they did a NPR movie, or whatever, But it was. I mean, did we really need it? I don't know.
Nah.
And did Robert Altman needed that to be his last film? Probably not. But he's made a lot of great films, so including the
I really like Gosford Park too. It was a really good ensemble movie.
Yeah, so if that had been his last movie, I think everybody, still would
have that. I agree. I agree.
It was what it was. I love this movie. I love it because the whole time you have no idea what is going to happen. We didn't even talk about the snake and the rattlesnake in the car scene. That was just fantastic. I was talking to my roommate and I said I would have fucking slammed on the brakes at that time and said screw getting hit or something. There's a freaking snake in my car, and I would have jumped right out.
Right.
And
one of the interesting things to me, and I remember when I first saw this in the theater, I did have some confusion because it was difficult for me to tell who was playing a character and who was playing themselves. So, for example, his lawyer, played by Sidney Pollack, I thought he was Sidney Pollack going to, initially he was going to Sidney Pollack's house and they were having a party. Well, no, Sidney Pollack was playing his lawyer. So that's why there was some confusion, especially with like Whoopi Goldberg. To me, she was more of a celebrity. So I figured, well, she's a celebrity doing well. No, she doesn't. She's playing a character. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a weird situation because you've got all sorts of different cameos from all these great people who just sort of pop in there. Marlee Matlin's in there, and Andy McDowell is in there.
Gary Busey is in there.
Busey's in all sorts of people.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. I was telling my roommate I was watching it and I was like, Gary Busey is in this movie. I heard Gary Busey's in this movie, and all of a sudden Gary Busey was there at that particular time, and she was like, "He's right there," And I was like, "Holy crap! We got to rewind it," because he's there, but he doesn't have any lines or anything. He's just
they're funny too because they're used to reveal what's going on with Tim Robbins. Like you've got the part where he walks in and there's Malcolm McDowell, and he's like, "Oh, Malcolm McDowell," and he goes up and shakes his hand and says, "Listen, if you ever badmouth me again, have the courtesy to do it to my face." I'm like, oh shit!
I would never mess with Malcolm McDowell. Jeez,
no.
Never in my life would I ever badmouth Malcolm
And
McDowell.
and then the one with Burt Reynolds, where he goes to meet Brian James, and he sees Burt Reynolds, and Burt shakes his hand. He's like, asshole.
Yeah, exactly. And then Larry comes up and says something to him, and he's like, "Who is that guy?" You know, like he didn't
Right.
know who that guy was.
Oh, right. And he's like over there talking with Angelica Houston. He's like, oh, he's in over his depth. He's going to drown over there.
Yeah, he's like talking to Angelica Houston and John Cusack, and they both look like they had no idea who this person is, like
Right, right.
or whatever.
That was
He's
funny.
like, "Oh, I love your films, blah blah blah. Hey, I'm Griffin Mills," and they're like, "Okay," like like I don't know, like I wish I had listened to the commentary or something, and like heard how they did those scenes, because like honestly that is hilarious that they had so many cameos. And I wonder if they were just like shooting at some of the locations that were actual real places, and these people were there and they were just like, hey, be in our movie, like.
Well, from what I understand, when he was shooting it, he sort of called in a lot of favors from friends and said, hey, do you mind doing this for just a few, a little bit here, a little bit there. I do know that they had to create on the spot this fake movie that they were shooting for the scene with Scott Glenn and Lily Tomlin, and that they kind of pretty much improvised that scene, which I think is really, really cool. It almost makes me wish that there was a movie that those guys had done so I could see it.
Well, that movie made me that part made me like it made me wonder a little bit, because I wasn't sure what was going on. Were they watching on the set, or were they watching like dailies?
Yeah, they were watching dailies. They were commenting on the stuff that's going on, and the funny thing isn't so much the movie; it's the interaction between the two. They're clearly not having a good time, and they're clearly not clicking, and they're both complaining about it. And it's just, to me, it's just a lot of fun seeing these people who we know only through Hollywood and through their roles sort of reacting with each other and just being very snarky. I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and was it and seeing the scene, the last movie, the movie that they've been working on or whatever, getting done, and seeing like the Bruce Willis is the hero who comes in at the last minute to save his which is, that is Hollywood. They would take that ending, which was supposed to be dark and dramatic and like
real
and make a Hollywood ending to it and stuff with a terrible like throwaway line of like traffic's a bitch or something,
right. Awful. And then of course he uses that later at the end. But then again, see, there again, that's part of the cynicism of the film, because remember, it's like halfway through, Griffin has to stand up and make that speech in front of all the audience in where they're preserving the films, and he says, Hollywood now more than ever, and our job is to protect the artistic integrity of films in Hollywood, and we in the other studios are making sure that we keep the artistic balance in all our films, and films are art. At the same time, they're undercutting the artistic integrity of the film that they're doing there, because it's just a load of bullshit, and I think that's what I loved about this film, is that, Robert Altman is out there saying, hey, this is what's going on here, guys. It may look like one thing, but that's just the way Hollywood wants you to look like. The fact is that there's a real dirty underside, and they've been making steamy underside of Hollywood movies for a long time. It goes back to the 40s and 50s. Hollywood Boulevard, all kinds of stuff like that.
Sunset Boulevard, you mean?
Sunset Boulevard, sorry.
But Hollywood Boulevard was a Roger Corman movie. I wonder if that,
But so that's a theme that's been done a lot, but it wasn't done quite as effectively, in my opinion, as Robert Altman in this film.
I agree. I think like this movie does generally, like, I mean, I like Sunset Boulevard. It's just it's a completely different movie, like than this. I mean, it's still a thriller, with, and it has a lot of the studio and other things going through it, but it doesn't, it's a completely different movie. I like this because it's like an updated tale of what what it's like to kind of deal with these nasty sides of the business, especially the idea that studio executives, their jobs are always on you just don't know if you're going to get fired,
Right.
or whatever, or get
And you got to do
replaced.
whatever they tell you. It's like that one poor girl in the very, very beginning where she's like, well, go find the guy's paper now, run. And she's got to go run across the studio to try and find something and drag it back. I'm like, what the hell, man?
I know. What was it? I just I always love to hear, because, like, honestly, studio executives, the one thing about studio executives that I've noticed, that and I'm not like a connoisseur of this stuff, like I don't know, I don't know like in-depth interviews or whatever of these people, but from what I've read, and like William Goldman writes an amazing book called Ventures in the Screen Trade, and there's some great stories involving studio executives and stuff like that. But like, if your movie, okay, say you are producing a film and it bombs badly, then you're most likely going to be replaced by somebody who's going to do a good job, right?
Right.
That is why Hollywood sticks to a lot more remakes and things that they're more secure, that's going to make them money, because it's like, okay, you look at a company like Blumhouse, right? The Blumhouse films, they're represented by Universal, right? So they went out and they made like small movies, like they did like Paranormal Activity, right? Paranormal Activity did very well. It made them a lot of money. They know people are most likely going to watch Paranormal Activity too. So then they do all these other movies. Then they do a movie like Josie and the Pussycats.
Ugh.
Not Josie and the Pussycats. What was the other one? It wasn't Josie and the Pussycat. That was an older one, but it was Jim, the Gem movie. That's okay. I was wrong. It was the Gem movie. You ever heard about that?
Mm-mm.
It bombed. It was the worst thing that, right? Luckily for them, they only had like that was like their biggest bomb, right? So they were able to make another, right? They were able to make money off of other things and keep going. However, some studios for a long time, from what I've read, were bombing. They were like in the 70s, especially, they were bombing so bad that people were afraid to take chances on original projects, and stuff, because,
Well,
you didn't know.
and that's one reason why they had a lot of the corporations come in and take over and run things, because it wasn't so much that there were bombs, because there's always going to be bombs. They had enough quality stuff. The problem was things got out of control. They weren't really able to control costs, and they were spending a lot of money on the artistic side, and they really weren't controlling the costs, and things were spiraling out of control. And that's one of the reasons why a number of the movies that they wanted to do, they either couldn't do or they didn't do well enough, because they just didn't have the money, and they were just hemorrhaging stuff left and right. And that was the reason why initially the studio started to bring in all these corporate people. The problem is, of course, is that they have a completely different mindset, and they're not really looking at it from an artistic point of view. They're looking at it solely from a money point of view.
Right.
But the attitude of the corporate exec is definitely in there, especially in Tim Robbins. I mean, he really sort of and he embodies it, like when he goes to the restaurant and he's like, I want this particular water, please, and he doesn't get it, and he just complains about it, and then he sends it back, and then he's like, oh, this is a wine glass, I want my water in a water glass, please. And just goofy entitled shit.
He was just like, I want this,
right. It's just goofy entitled shit that a lot of studio people are considered, this is the way they are, very entitled, very much, we've got to have everything the way they want, because they're spoiled rotten. Because a lot of them, I guess they're not the kind of people who are going to get fired in an instant, But then again, even the head of the studio, Brian James, gets canned. So it does happen to people, and it does happen. I mean, we see that all the time in some of the bigger studios. People leave, or people are forced out, or people are fired. It happens,
All right. You want to hear some fun trivia on this movie?
Sure.
The writer pitching The Graduate Part 2 to Griffin Mill is a cameo by Buck Henry as himself. Right. Buck Henry co-wrote the screenplay for The Graduate. The Graduate 2 pitching was hilarious.
Yes, it was.
That was great. Like, really, like, okay, now all three of them are living in an apartment together. Like, I don't know if I really want to see that movie. That just sounds weird, you know?
I know.
Let's see. And then the scene where Tim Robbins, as Griffin, stops to say hello to Burt Reynolds in the restaurant. Reynolds improvised the scene, not knowing anything about Griffin, but manages to know he's an asshole.
Nice.
Yeah. The film has more Oscar-winning actors and actresses in the cast than any other movie in history. There are 12, apparently. Wow. Cher, James Coburn, Louise Fletcher, Whoopi Goldberg, Joel Grey, Angelica Houston, Jack Lemmon, Marlee Matlin, Tim Robbins, Julia Roberts, Susan Sarandon, and Rod Steiger. 13 when you count Oscar-winning producer and director Sidney Pollack, who also makes a cameo appearance. Also includes 15 other actors, and blah, blah, blah. We don't need to go on that. But that was pretty cool. Like 12, 13 Oscar-winning actors in it.
Right.
The celebrity cameos were not written in the script. Robert Altman added them all in. No scripted dialogue was given to any celebrity for their cameos. So I just think that's really cool. Like, I mean, there's just a lot of really neat stuff that's kind of happened, you know?
Yeah, and I read that there were a couple of them that ended up on the cutting room floor. Let's see, the one that gets Patrick Swayze, I believe, was one that was originally shot but ended up getting cut, and oh god, there are a few others that ended up getting cut. So yeah, there could have even been more. You know, pretty funny.
That's wonderful, though. You know, like I don't know, I guess when you're Robert Altman, you can ask anybody to be in your movie.
Sure. That's cool. I mean, if you can do it, why not? It adds to the verisimilitude of the fact that you're in Hollywood, making a Hollywood movie, and it's loaded with Hollywood people.
Right. Exactly. You know, but see, that's the beauty right now is you can, like if you made a movie about today's thing, you could use the celebrities of today. Sadly, we don't really have, our celebrity nowadays is like more or less influencers or whatever,
right.
You know, like Kim Kardashian is a celebrity, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like
people who are famous for nothing other than being famous.
Right, exactly. And so if you made a movie like The Player today, I mean, you could probably still come up with like Bruce Willis or, John Cusack, kind of maybe. John Cusack's kind of fallen on,
Dude, where's Tim Robbins these days?
I know.
I mean, he was riding high between this and Shawshank Redemption. He was like the guy, the main actor at this time.
Hudsucker Proxy.
Proxy. But he kind of vanished. I can't remember a movie he's done in the last 5 years. Can you?
No. Maybe he's just retired, kind of thing.
No idea. He's probably successful enough that he could. I mean, why do a shitty movie if you don't have to?
Right.
But I do like some of the other touches too that Altman puts in. The difference. I love the scenes, the restaurant scenes, like lunch, and they explain how lunch is like a big thing, and everybody's table hopping and making deals, and it's not really about lunch whatsoever. It's all just who's being seen with who, and who's talking to who, and who's making deals with who. And the part where he's calling Larry Levy on the phone and saying, "Oh yeah, I got to go to my AA meeting," and he goes like, "Oh, I didn't know you had a drinking problem." He's like, "Oh, I really don't, but that's where all the meetings are. That's where all the deals are being made these days." That was great. I'm like, that is such a perfect example of how Hollywood at least was in the 90s anyway.
Hey, look, it is still the thing because like I was watching a show called LA Complex, one of my favorite like CW shows, and Jewel State, who I'm sure you love, as Kaylee from from Serenity, and Firefly, but she's like drinking something. She gets like alcohol or whatever, right? She gets up and she goes, "Okay, I'm late for my AA meeting," and the person looks over at her and goes, "Wait, what? But you were just," and she was like, "I go for the networking," and she walked off. And so I'm guessing that is a place that people can go and network. But I don't know. I do want to mention Tim Robbins is in the second season of Castle Rock, so at least he's doing that.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't been watching that, which I tried watching the first episode and just never didn't get into it yet. But I do want that is something that's on my radar to watch. I don't think I know enough Stephen King movies to get all the references.
I've heard it's really good, but I like you said, there's a million movies out there. There's a million things to watch. There's only so much time you have, and I can't do everything. And I think Castle Rock, that's not like available to everybody, is it? That's not.
It's Hulu.
It's Hulu, right? Yeah.
Right.
So.
And I have Hulu, so I mean I can watch it, but I haven't like gone into doing it. It's probably on DVD or Blu-ray, but that's the problem I'm having with streaming these days, like Netflix and everything. A lot of them, they don't go to DVD or Blu-ray and stuff because they want you to fucking buy the streaming thing. So that's kind of lame to me. But I think Castle Rock is one of those movies that's on DVD or Blu-ray. It definitely deserves to be on Blu-ray, But yeah, so all in all, I think this movie is, it's definitely a perfect Criterion film. Like this movie was something that I think when I picked it up, I was like, oh, I just really want to have a movie that's about, the making of movies. And I remembered it being a good movie, and everything. But I was like, I'm going to need to own this movie at some point because I'm in the film business. I love it, and I live in Hollywood now. It's kind of perfect for me to, to watch this. So, I mean, that's what I think. More people should check out The Player if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen, you're listening to this thing, we spoiled the shit out of it. So,
yeah,
sorry.
This is yet another film that I wish I could have gone back in a time machine and showed Ed Wood because, he, of course, wrote a book about the steamy side of Hollywood and how what things are done. And I would love to have heard his reaction to this.
Well, I mean, he's written about it, but he's written in the Ed Wood
from his perspective,
outskirts, of the real Hollywood. He doesn't know. He didn't like. Then that's the thing. Like, if he had lived in this day and age, first of all, bad movies, would be are like heralded these days. And we have a whole show about it called Indie Film Cafe. We love that shit. And other people love that shit. So he would never, his movies wouldn't get popular though, I don't think, because had Plan 9 been made more so today other than the remake that John Johnson did, it wouldn't have, people would not have the feelings that they did back then. Back then they loved, the 80s, they loved making fun of it because there wasn't so many of these. Nowadays, anybody can make a freaking movie. I think Ed Wood would have gotten lost in the shuffle of things. He would have probably still loved, and he would have been able to, network a lot easier, I think, social networking. Could you imagine Ed Wood Facebook page?
Well, the thing about it is that it's, technologically a lot easier and a lot cheaper to make a film now than when you were back in the 50s and early 60s trying to get enough money to get, film ends together in order to shoot 5 minutes worth of film.
I think that would be hilarious if somebody took a Facebook page and made it to look like Ed Wood was making a Facebook page, and
making a new movie.
And making a new,
Back from the grave.
Back from the grave. That would be hard though, because then people would actually be expecting it. So somebody would have to pretend to be Ed Wood or, to use his name. And I don't know if his estate would appreciate somebody pretending.
I don't even know if there is an estate at this point. I have no idea.
True. But anyway, that's
our conversations always end up going back to Ed Wood one way or another.
Hey, I'm a huge fan of his.
Me too.
We both are. So there you go. I absolutely love this. So
I guess we'll never see an Ed Wood movie on Criterion, which is a shame.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, really, the only one that probably would is Plan 9, or something, because that's the one that's heralded as the work of art. But I don't think
the one he'll be remembered for.
Exactly, which is so funny that they say that in the movie Ed Wood. But Ed Wood should be like that movie itself should be a
Yeah.
Criterion film. But it's already got a really good DVD. I mean, I don't know what else they could add except making it look more pretty, like that's about the only thing. I mean, the DVD, I don't know if you have the Blu-ray or DVD or whatever, but it's like phenomenal one. But yeah, I suggest people checking out The Player, because I think The Player is a film that I don't know. It's something, if you're into films and the filmmaking process and everything, and sort of want to see an insider's look into what, like, how things get developed, looking at the pitch meetings people do. I mean, some of those
25 words or less.
25 words or less. Can you, that's something I would suggest to people who are writers now. Go out and find a take your idea and put it down to 25 words or less, and stuff, and see if that works, if that's something that people will be into.
And I like the fact that Tim Robbins' character explains. He's like, we get 50,000 stories a year, and we can only produce 12.
Right.
So, it's not like we can sit there and read script after script after script. You have to give us the best pitch you can in 25 words or less, because we just don't have the time.
You look at some big producers, like you look at somebody like Michael Bay, which I know you're probably not a huge fan of, but you look at somebody like him, and if you look at his IMDb, right, and you go to his producing, right, credits, and then you go to his upcoming producing credits, he's probably got 100, movies that he's going to produce. He's not going to produce all those movies. Never in a million years is he going to have time to produce all those things, because he would have to produce literally 4 movies, 5 movies, maybe even 10 movies a month.
Yeah,
in order to do that. And yeah, it's just ridiculous. Nobody ever has time or money for that. So the fact that they spend a lot of money just paying the writers so that they can have that project that they can potentially make, they don't know what's going to be, that's why they buy them, because they don't know what's going to be the big thing.
Sometimes it's just a question of timing. Stories can get bought and then they sit on it. They sit on it for a couple of years and it doesn't get made for one reason or another. And all of a sudden, boom, it gets made. It gets resurrected, or it gets traded around, or it gets, different things can happen. And it's kind of an interesting process in and of itself. They don't really go into it that much with this particular film, but I do know that the process of how stories get turned into films is an interesting one in and of itself. But I did like, the pitches, and I did like, how some of the producers will step in and say, yeah, we like this, but we need more tits, or we need more of this, or we need Julia Roberts. Shove Julia Roberts into everything.
Well, yeah, that was one of my favorite parts, is Brian James saying, wait, there's no nudity or something like that. Like, I don't, how can you make a movie without any nudity? Here, like, okay, well, there's what do you mean there's no stars? Which is the greatest part, is like that Griffin tells him, oh, back in the day, Brian James's character produced movies that didn't have any stars,
stars, just talent.
No stars, just talent. So he says that to him, and he gives him like the biggest look, like confused, like, what are you talking about? No stars, just talent. Like, he had never actually heard that phrase, which that meant that Griffin just pulled that shit out of his ass, which I thought was, little like things like that you pick up when you're watching it. Maybe like if you watch it more than once, you start noticing those little things, those little jabs at each other, that I think is just wonderful with this movie. I thought, honestly, I would give this a 10-star rating, or whatever, 10 out of 10. This movie is just fantastic, and I recommend it to anyone that, once again, if you're a fan of the industry, or you're a fan of movies, period, or the making of movies, then there you go.
There you go. I agree.
So to end this video, I just wanted to talk, let people know that yes, I guess we're gonna probably do. We talked about it in the beginning, but we're probably gonna do more Zoom things or something, right? If not for Indie Film Cafe, maybe for this, or for film freaks, or for if we have like more than, just you and me or something. Or, I mean, you might want to do a Criterion with just Lenore, or something, or whatever. And you feel free, or whatever. But we're going to have some fun this summer and, coming up, because we got a lot going on at Indie Film Cafe. And so we're trying our hardest to keep, you'll see an update coming up next this month, early this month, and stuff. So just keep checking out Indie Film Cafe on YouTube, and indiefilmcafe.podbean.com on, for the podcast stuff, because we got a lot going on.
Absolutely. And there's more Criterion Watch coming up too. This is what, season 2, right?
Right.
So we got a bunch more seasons to come. So stay tuned.
Exactly. So thank you guys so much. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and tune in next month with Paul's Criterion Watch, and also check in next month with my Film Freaks. So thank you guys, and have a good one. Bye.
All right. Bye.